Everyone has their hobbies. Some watch sports, soap operas, fantasy football. Others LARP. LARP stands for Live Action Roleplay, where players meet and physically act out their fictional characters' actions, mannerisms, and speech. It began in the 1970s, and since then has been kept away from the mainstream until its recent rise in popularity due mainly to documentaries, movies, online games, and virtual reality worlds. To list a few, there's Dungeons and Dragons, Minecraft, World of Warcraft, Second Life, and the list can go on and on. But what brings people to LARP? Is it the storyline, the countless genres? Is it the want to escape reality a few hours a day? And can we call online role-playing live action? Or should we create another acronym? VRP, maybe? Virtual Reality Roleplay? We took a look into one LARPing world created on Second Life, King's Landing. King's Landing is a LARPer's dream with its rich history and highly addictive and intriguing plot. King's Landing is a fantasy world created by author George R.R. Martin in the book A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. It is the capital of the Seven Kingdoms and located on the east coast of Westeros overlooking Blackwater Bay. As described by Second Life, it is a detailed medieval fantasy roleplay sim where land is torn in strife by back alley politics and greed. We interviewed several people that use King's Landing in Second Life to find out why and how they LARP.
King's Landing is only a small part of a wider community of role-players online. Text-based role-playing, or RP, usually consists of a player writing from the perspective of a character while interacting with other players' characters within the wider context of the RP. The medium in which this occurs varies from clients like MUDs to Facebook to online forums and beyond. Roleplay in Second Life combines the visual aspects of live-action role-playing with the textual aspects of text-based role-playing. Most of the users in King's Landing that I spoke to started out role-playing on forums before eventually graduating to various communities in Second Life. King's Landing in particular is set within the universe of George R.R. Martin's series A Song of Ice and Fire. However, not everyone in King's Landing is a die-hard fan of the series. One user I spoke to admitted that they had never read the series or watched the show, and that they used Google to supplement their knowledge. What appealed to the user I spoke to was the sim structure and the rules in place, as well as the community at large. Although she was mildly interested in A Song of Ice and Fire before, she ended up joining King's Landing because a Second Life friend urged her to. Surprisingly, structure is a big draw for many of the people who spend their time there. King's Landing, in comparison to several of the other roleplay sims on Second Life, has a strict application process that occurs off of Second Life, in which players interested in role-playing pick a house and submit a character profile, detailing things such as personality and history. Although this discourages casual players from joining, some of the King's Landing's users feel that it improves the quality of the community overall. Overall, it seems that while King's Landing has some appeal to people who are long-standing fans of the series it draws its inspiration from, that isn't something that's necessary to roleplay there. What's necessary is dedication, a willingness to adhere to the rules, and an interest in working together with the community as a whole.
As a role-playing community, players in King's Landing can create their own characters and write their own stories in which similarities can be observed between the avatar in Second Life and the player in real life. This means that the personality created somehow reflects their actual selves and lives to some extent. That being said, this role-playing community has two types of people. Type A, the most common type of person, represents a character that is a projection of the writer. For example, one that the writer would like to be. Basically, there is zero detachment from writer to character. People of this type are only motivated to write according to their actual real needs, emotional or else. That's why they tend to cause problems, because they insist on perceiving the stories written as something more than just a story, as they get involved emotionally with other similarly minded people. Type A must realize that King's Landing is a creative platform and that it ought to remain as such, not a place to really live a second life. Ailey, a female user, has been role-playing in King's Landing with a total of 8 characters, although she predominantly uses 2. Saskia Tyrell, who is a meek little writer who is terrible at talking to people, and Allegra Bolton, who is insane, violent, abusive, and untrustworthy. When asked about any coincidences between her characters and herself, Ailey responded, I maintain a belief that all our characters are like us in some regard. Saskia, like me, is very bad at talking to others unless it's through writing. She's not good at making friends. Though she means well, she's just really socially awkward, which I find I am. Illigre is very angry. She has abandoned any small part of herself that is feminine because of her disfiguration. She is someone who can't help but be unstable, which I can relate to, being I suffer mental illness in real life. In real life, Ailey is an artist and designs video games and writes webcomics. Type B enjoys creating avatars and writing the story for the sake of role-playing. People of this type create any kind of character and, while there might be some similarities between the character and the writer, they do not aim for it. Typically, the motives behind each character is to explore a new concept, try a different path, perceive things from different perspectives and so on, rather than representing their own real life. She, another female user, has created and written for more than 15 characters, male and female from ages 15 to 42 for 5 years, but she predominantly uses 2. Delphin, who is driven either by the need for revenge or by honor, and Ide, a bastard who has barely any morality. When asked which of her characters is like her in terms of personality and such, she replied, Delphin's love for honor, but Ide's self-centered mindset is closer to mine. However, she clearly stated, I am one of the people who consciously try to push the character away from my own personality, for good measure. The closer the character is to a writer, the more intense the empathy between the two. And while, for the good turns of a scenario, that is wonderful, when things go wrong, the consequences are bad. In real life, she's a student of architecture. With those who create a second self based on the real self and those who create new selves different from the real self, King's Landing is divided into 2 types of people with regards to how much the role-playing character corresponds with the role player's appearance, qualities, and so on. Still, while many people visit Second Life every day for fun, and while Second Life is an escape from the first life, it is a cause for concern when the player and character become too close.
As previously mentioned, King's Landing is a location that focuses upon role-playing as the main form of community. I wanted to understand how rules and regulations on the island are enforced. After interviewing a regular in the common room where role-playing is not normally practiced, I learned that avatars that are appointed as moderators regulate the rules. These moderators, who are appointed by the land's owners, role-play along with the other avatars in the village. However, they possess the power to issue warnings and ban role players from the island. Unlike other locations, the rules are not explicitly denoted and cannot be quickly picked up on without previous observations of others who are well versed in the Game of Thrones role-playing in Second Life. The most prominent difficulty that my interviewee stated was the limitations of her avatar and its movements in regard to the amount and complexity of the expressions that she was able to convey while role-playing. Less emotion and expression is necessary in average Second Life interaction. When role-playing in King's Landing, shared knowledge and rules are salient. It is important to communicate precisely to participate in productive role-play. In building community, it is helpful that there is guiding, yet not overbearing implementation of fair play. While more difficult to abide by and communicate in effective manners than other than typical locations in Second Life, following the rules of interaction is what binds the community together in an engaging and meaningful way. To conclude, there are many reasons why people LARP, and online games and virtual reality worlds have made it much easier. From our research, we found that many LARPers on King's Landing don't really need to know all the storylines to roleplay. Many only know the basics and supplement their knowledge through online searches when needed. Some players see themselves through their characters and sometimes take the game very seriously. Others play for the sake of playing. Overall, it is a sense of community that draws people to King's Landing, a need to belong to something bigger, which is shown not only through this particular sim world, but through all virtual reality worlds and social media platforms. It is in our nature to want to connect and interact with others, and virtual reality worlds like Second Life create a setting to do so. After all, no man is an island.